There are moments in homicide cases where you think this can't get any worse. And it suddenly does.
Chief, has anything changed from when we talked last? No.
There are some people in the world who are so evil that nothing means anything other than their own pleasure.
I dropped to my knees. I told them my daughter is in that house.
Somebody's been murdered and a child is missing.
I never knew what hate was until that day.
Then it becomes even worse when they realize another possibility. Somebody took the child and killed the babysitter. The longer it takes to find her, the less likely it is that she'll be found alive. Every cop at that scene knows that. The child is probably in the hands of a murderer. I spent my career closing murder cases. But I'm not the only one who answered the call. It takes a rare breed to solve the unsolvable, to catch a ruthless killer, to find justice for the dead. That's what it takes to be an American detective. It's June 22nd. It's 3:30 in the morning. We're in a small town in northern Minnesota, Bemidji, Minnesota. A call is received at the Emergency Response Center that a house is on fire. The fire department responds. The place is fully involved. They manage finally to put the fire out, but the house is destroyed. They see a mattress in the living room. They pull back the mattress.
Got deceased female victim.
And they discover human remains.
My name is Rob Frake. I'm a former special agent with the Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension. I remember exactly where I was at. I had an appointment at the VA clinic in Bemidji, but I received a call. There's a fire at Hillcrest Manor. There's a body inside.
On the way.
Frake at the time, he had never been around many homicide investigations. He didn't understand what he was about to see and do.
Hillcrest Manor is a relatively large trailer park on the north side of city limits. I worked with Agent Girardi a fair amount.
What we got?
I got one inside, deceased female.
Okay.
Special Agent Paul Girardi had extensive experience in homicide investigations. This place is gone, gutted, destroyed. So it's a mess, an absolute mess.
The initial facts that I received were there was a woman that was found inside, deceased.
Frake is informed that the deceased person who lives in this place is a 35-year-old woman whose name is Melissa Norby.
Her hands were bound. You can infer a lot of things from that, but it's pretty obvious that somebody killed her and they tried to light the place on fire to cover up any evidence at the scene.
Our suspect had put a bed mattress over her. And mattresses are treated to be fire resistant, which likely helped preserve her body.
Question becomes, was she die because of the fire or did she die by other means? We assume this is a concealment fire of a homicide, but we don't know yet. So rather than get lost in what it could be, let's try to determine what it is.
The fire marshal noted an indication of an accelerant because glass is pushed out several yards from the trailer. They did find the gas can in the bedroom.
There is a possibility that it was just a completely random act, but that's highly unlikely. So we're going to be looking for things like a boyfriend, a neighbor. There's going to be some sort of connection.
Who does Melissa Norby know who might want to make her look like this?
She lived with her 12-year-old son, who was not at home at the time of the fire.
So Melissa has a child. He's not there because he's staying with a cousin whose name is Tuesday Colby.
The BCA came to my home to speak with me and her son, and they had identified Melissa's body, and it was really hard. Everything was very overwhelming. We were basically like sisters. We were extremely close. She loved to laugh, she loved to smile. When Melissa was 10 years old, she confided in me that an older man had sexually assaulted her, and it really took a toll on her. Ever since that day, she was different. When Melissa was growing into a woman, there was always an older man around who would take advantage of her sexually. Watching her constantly hate herself is the worst, because you can't make it better.
So Melissa's had her issues with men over time, and she dates people of less than sterling character.
Do you know of anybody that would have wanted to see your cousin killed?
There were a few characters in Melissa's life that I thought might know more.
I'm not quite sure. I just know they're acquaintances.
She says that she has a friend who lives in Bemidji, whose name is Larry Erickson.
Larry had apparently been in some sort of romantic relationship with our decedent. Larry agreed to come in and speak with us.
Just got a few quick questions for you.
Larry had told investigators that he was home all evening watching movies. He denied any contact with Norby, denied knowing about the fire.
Were you guys romantically involved?
No. He denied any type of physical relationship with Melissa Norby, which was contrary to what we had learned earlier.
Erickson says she's been a good friend of his for some time. But we had a confrontation a couple months ago, and it's kind of damaged the relationship. Did you say confrontation? We like confrontations. So Frake is immediately interested.
He's in close proximity. He was up around the time that the fire started, and I thought Larry was looking really good as a suspect.
Larry, can I take a look at your phone?
You don't need to do that. Why would you need to do that?
And Larry proceeded to start destroying his phone.
Hey!
Well, now you have my undivided attention. What is in that phone that speaks to the death of Melissa Norby? Let's find out. What can be learned from this phone? Larry becomes so angry that he becomes physically aggressive toward Frake.
You kidding me?
The interview wasn't going well.
He'd started to physically destroy his phone.
You are clearly involved in some sort of activity you don't want exposed.
All right, we're done.
So we're going to find out. This phone is going to be examined for content.
Hey, detective, come on in.
Frake checks back with a tech team. What's in the phone that's connected to this case? Well, it's not exactly connected to your case. What does that mean? He said photographs and video of him and his girlfriend in, shall we say, compromising positions. No, God. It's a personal porno collection? Is that what we're talking about? Yeah. Nothing of any value.
Larry ultimately alibied out and he wasn't involved.
Definitely, probably not our guy.
Okay. So now what sounded so promising, like it often does, collapses. While this is going on with Frake, crime scene investigators are still processing the scene. They examine the victim's car.
Find anything?
Bemidji investigators did find mail inside of Melissa Norby's car that gave a name of a person, Rob Bacchus.
We don't know why that mail is in the car. The reasonable conclusion is he's a friend, an associate. Investigators are questioning neighbors. Do you know a guy named Robert Bacchus? Oh yeah, I know Robert. We'd like to talk to him. Well, you better hurry up.
We learned that several hours after Melissa Norby's house burns down, this individual leaves town on a bus.
What are you doing that for, Robert? Are you getting away from what you've done?
Any investigation, it's always time is of the essence, so we wanted to find that person right away. We called the Cass County deputies. We said, we need you to stop the bus for us.
If someone truly is believing they're going to escape somewhere by riding a commercial bus, haven't given a lot of thought to this. The police, with one phone call, turns the bus into a holding cell. They stop the bus, and they recover Mr. Bacchus.
And he talked about his relationship with the victim. He was upset that the victim was deceased, but hadn't had a consistent relationship with her for some time.
So, Mr. Bacchus, why are you suddenly on a bus going 4 or 5 hours away?
He said he was leaving town for some medical treatments.
He has a perfectly reasonable explanation for his behavior. He has to go to this doctor, and that's where he's going. And Holden confirms all of this. Bacchus is out. He's not involved in this.
Mr. Frake?
In the meantime, the investigators hear from the medical examiner the official cause of Melissa Norby's death: asphyxia. She is dead as a result of ligature strangulation. Ligature is anything applied to the neck to cause sufficient pressure to stop the breathing of the victim. As far as trace DNA, if heat alone won't destroy it, fire will.
At this point, we're getting several hours into the investigation, and we don't even really have anybody that we're looking for. Every hour that goes by, this person can get further and further from the scene.
I don't know if it was over the radio or if it was a phone call at the time, but I still get tingles.
A female came up to the crime scene, made contact with officers on scene, and she told them that her 5-year-old daughter had spent the night with Melissa Norby.
She's 5 years old. Her name is Brittany. Oh, God. Now we've gone from adult to child, for God's sake. Where is this kid? They have no idea. None. It's now noonish, the day following the fire, and here comes this distraught woman whose name is Amanda.
Brittany! Where's my daughter?
She's demanding to speak to someone in church.
My phone had rang. It was Tuesday, which is Missy's cousin on the other line. And she said, freaking out, please tell me it's not true. Tell me Melissa's house is not on fire. And I was like, Brittany's over there. What the hell are you talking about? I freaked out. I hopped in my vehicle and I made it over there in 5 minutes. All I really remember was me saying, please tell me that's not the house. I dropped to my knees. It was like, okay, that is her house. I told them, my daughter is in that house. Brittany is in that house. I've known Melissa since elementary school. We were inseparable. We grew up. Her son was my nephew, and my kids were her niece and nephews. Melissa and I would always take the kids to the beach, slumber parties, movies, just a lot of fun family time. Brittany is the baby of the family. Melissa was Brittany's aunt, just like a second mom. Brittany would light up every time Missy would say, hey, do you want to come over and spend some time with me?
She goes on to explain that it's common for Brittany to spend the night with Melissa Norby in this trailer.
Melissa had called me at like 9 o'clock at night. Do you mind if I take Brittany? She said her son is with Tuesday.
Well, where is Brittany now? The investigators do a thorough search of the remains of the house. They find no evidence of any other human remains. They do a thorough search of the area. No result. The child is not here.
When you get information that there's a child missing, that's what knocks the wind out of you.
Then it becomes even worse when they realize another possibility. Somebody took the child and killed the babysitter. The longer it takes to find them, the less likely it is that she'll be found alive. Every cop at that scene knows that.
She was close to the age of one of my children. You start thinking about how scared your kid would be. I think that mom instinct just kicks in no matter what.
So now it's all hands on deck. Nobody's going anywhere until we find this kid. And who's responsible for this? The focus must remain on associates of the adult victim.
So as I was going through Melissa's phone records, I was looking for anything that maybe stand out that wasn't a local number. Every hour that goes by, this person can get further from the scene. This child could be anywhere in the United States almost, including up in Canada.
Where have we not dug yet? It has to be somebody that knows about that child. It's somebody close. So how do we find somebody close? They dispatch agents to Tuesday Collerby's house, and they talk to the son.
Do you know if your mom was seeing anybody in particular?
They ask, is there anybody your mother has been recently seeing? And he says, yes. Well, who might that be?
And he's like, it was Chance.
Chance.
Chance?
Chance.
And I was like, Chance?
Well, they call him Chance, but that's not his real name. The kid says, I don't trust him.
Now, Chance isn't his real name. She called him Chance because, in her world, he was her last chance at love.
Toward the end there, she was secretive about guys because I didn't approve of half the guys she would be with, and her cousin really didn't care for them either.
Melissa continually made poor choices about love and about her own self-respect. And clearly in Melissa's case, it was a weakness.
We immediately thought, well, why is she not using his real name? Is he married? Like, why are we not seeing him in her social media? Because we're several hours into this investigation, and we have a pretty good handle on who she's talking to online. And he's nowhere to be found.
And then her son said, yeah, he has a food truck.
There's not a lot of food trucks around here. Well, let's make a call to the city clerk to figure this out.
I remember I was at the law enforcement center when the food truck information came back.
Okay, listen up, folks.
It was later in the evening. We were in a briefing. So I remember it was like, the hairs on your back of your neck stand up.
City clerk said, yeah, there's a new food truck in town. It's Jake's Eats, owned by Jacob Kenda. It's one of those moments in your life that you'll never forget, where you were standing, what the room smelled, heard, and felt like, and it got quiet. Oh my God, Jacob Kenda. Well, we all knew who Jacob Kenda was. He was on probation for a sex-related offense. He was one of those guys that would be fully capable of kidnapping a girl.
He is the guy. He's the guy. Even if you haven't seen him yet, you just somehow know it. Investigators are looking at the record of 32-year-old Jacob Kenda. He is currently on probation for possession of child pornography. He is friends with a woman who's now dead, who had a child in her possession, and now the child is missing.
It just seemed so obvious once his name came up. Of course, this would be him. Why are we looking for all these other suspects? He should have been suspect number one.
It is always the case in investigations. You're going to get the wrong guy in your sights. But when you get the right one, that's when you can feel it in your bones.
I talked to Mom and Dad that evening. They were distraught.
My emotions were like everywhere because, well, I lost my sister and then my daughter was gone.
So early evening on June 22nd, we went to Jacob's residence. Pretty rural area, almost an off-grid type cabin. He'd left. We walked around the property.
Hey, Holden. Look.
There were some pretty obvious indicators this person might be it. There's a spot of dead grass next to other gas cans, which surely indicates that he got a gas can from right here at his house and used that to light the arson fire of Melissa Nordby's home. It's pretty damning evidence, however, no little girl.
The search for Brittany has continued as day becomes night.
At that point, everybody's out running leads. They're literally doing everything they can to figure out where this little girl might be, where Jacob Kenda has been for the last 24 hours.
Hello. The probation officer reaches Jacob by phone, and he tells him to report to police headquarters right now.
He did not make it to a law enforcement center till midnight.
When he arrived, we noticed on his vehicle there was tall grass hanging underneath it. Looked like it had been driving through a field. Jacob Kenda's feet and pants were also wet. Again, we'd got a ton of rain. Your feet and pants don't get wet if you're walking in a parking lot after rain, but they would get soaking wet if you were walking through a field. He was interviewed by Special Agent Paul Girardi and Special Agent Chad Museus. Agent Girardi and Agent Museus are interrogators. Jacob Kenda screwed up by stepping into an interview room with Chad and Paul.
Where did you just come from?
Well, I was fishing up north.
After the probation officer called Jacob Kenda, we were able to get the cell phone location.
Okay, fishing where?
Clear Lake.
Clear Lake.
Based on where his cell phone pinged, he was in Big Fork, 30, 40 miles away from Clear Lake, where he said he was.
Yeah, did you hear about the fire?
Yeah.
Okay.
I do know that lady, actually.
And what's her name?
Melissa Nordby.
Do you have any way to get a hold of her? Or?
No. I'll have her phone number here.
Ken is denying any type of relationship with Melissa.
Do you know the missing girl? Do you know her?
No.
Do you know her mom is Amanda?
No.
He denied knowing the little girl or ever having contact with the little girl.
Have you ever seen a little girl in person other than in a photo?
No.
He would give short one-word answers. He's pushed away from the table. He's sitting back with his arms crossed. He had some nonverbal body language that he was uncomfortable.
His responses to our questions made us not very optimistic. I was worried we wouldn't have a good outcome.
Jacob is being Mr. Innocent. Don't know anything about anything. That's pretty normal for a guy with experience in the system. You make no admissions of any kind. It's been almost 24 hours since the murder. And Jacob says, if you don't arrest me, I'm going home. We're not going to arrest you, Jacob. Not yet, anyway.
He was allowed to leave about 4:30 that morning.
We took his phone, we took his clothes, and we took his Jeep. His dad came and picked him up. He left angry, and we left there feeling as though we had a double murder.
We sent surveillance units out because now we knew where he was at.
Our perpetrator has 12 or 14 hours to decide what to do with his child. The statistics are overwhelming. The longer this takes, the less likely the outcome will be good.
At that point, we just really thought he brought her somewhere rural, and that the next morning we were going to begin trying to locate where he put her.
I came home and I remember I laid down on the cot and my oldest had been waiting for me to come home. And all she did was reach out and took my hand. So I fell asleep holding her hand, and that just intensified. that we have to get this kid back, whether she's alive or dead, because I would want to know.
Detectives don't like investigating the death of a child.
Mm-mm.
Why? Why is it different?
I don't want to talk about that anymore. Too many memories creep back for me, my boy.
Myself and Senior Special Agent Don Newhouse got in his car to drive to Big Fork. We really needed more information on what he had done up in that area. We called Itasca County Sheriff's Office, our neighboring county.
It turns out his brother owns 40 acres of ground in Big Fork. What's up with that? What is drawing him to the 40 acres?
Jacob Kenda could have put this little girl anywhere in northern Minnesota. Why would Jacob Kenda put her on property that's deeded to somebody that shares his last name? And without missing a beat, Agent Newhouse explained that's controlled access. He's gonna go back. We had to do basically a map reconnaissance of the area. We had a specific gravel road in mind that led to the property, and when we pulled onto the gravel, I could see one set of tracks. At that point, we stopped, got out, and we continued to walk, following tracks, until we came to the top of a hill and we noticed a pickup camper parked along a wood line. We walked up, and the doorknob was wrapped tight with electrical tape. I felt like one way or the other, we were getting close.
They both know they're going to find that child one way or the other. The question is it the child or the child's remains?
I grabbed my shirt and kind of just pulled on the tape, and I flipped the door open. And there's a little girl sitting there on the bed. I'm basically in disbelief in what I'm seeing and trying to muster together the words.
Is it okay if I come in? Okay, you don't have to be scared, okay? We're the police. Okay, my name's Rob and this is Don. How old are you?
Probably 5 or something. My mommy's name is Amanda.
How do you feel watching that back?
Yeah, I've watched that video quite a few times. It's, you know, you get the same reaction every time. I don't know if a lot of folks realize really how hard some of these cases are.
There she is. Not the end of the story, but no longer necessary to search for Brittany because the police have her in their arms.
We got back to the car and I said, Don, take a picture and then send this out to the group.
I still get chills talking about it today, how many years afterwards. I can't almost physically describe that feeling.
I cried so hard in the car because I was so happy that she was alive and so, sorry.
I've had a great career. I've done a lot of really cool things. The outcome, finding our missing girl, definitely the best of my career. Definitely.
My phone rang, and he says, Amanda, we have your daughter. We have Brittany. And I said, please tell me she is alive. And he said, yes, she's alive. This picture actually is the reason I call them family. The sheriff's department, the BCA, everybody involved. Their family.
There's always moments in law enforcement that reinforce the idea why you took the oath in the first place. This is one of those days. Ken is wanted for murder and kidnapping. And now the whole state of Minnesota is looking for this creep.
We're setting up a perimeter near the camper where the girl was found because we know that's where he's gonna go. And that's where they find him. On the road back to the camper.
They find him sleeping in his father's truck.
Place your hands behind your back.
Being the criminal genius that he is, he decides it's more important to sleep in a vehicle that's being looked at by every policeman in the state of Minnesota. They bring him in. Here he is.
Jake, has anything changed from when we talked last?
No.
Nothing's changed from last night.
No. What changed between 2 hours ago and now, right?
He asked what changed from the previous night, and I showed him the picture of Rob and Brittany alive. His eyes kind of rolled back.
Now, start over. What do you got to tell us?
Now's the time, Jake. I didn't want to tell you. Okay.
Well, okay, Jacob. That'll still work. And you're being held without bond for first-degree murder, kidnapping of a minor child, and they lock him up. But what happened that Jacob decided to kill Melissa and burn her house down around her?
I remember the anger, the surprise, the frustration when we saw those text messages.
The technical service agent was going through the electronics, and he said, "Holy, you're not gonna believe what I found."
Jacob Ken had basically demanded that Melissa get the little girl and bring her to the house the night that he decided to kill Melissa Norby. And Melissa Norby helped do that. And her actions directly resulted in this little girl's abduction.
Disturbing to the point of absolute shock. It is apparent from the texting that Melissa is part of the plot. Were she alive, should be in custody. But she's in a drawer at the morgue.
I could say that I would never have expected this from Melissa. She didn't always make the best choices, but I would never have thought she was capable of this. I'm really angry at her still.
I never knew what hate was until that day. It's like, how can somebody that you've known for 30 plus years do that to you?
Melissa Norby had the same problem that Jacob Ken has. A twisted sexual desire that overwhelmed her judgment, her kinship with other humans, her friendships. All of it meant nothing. These people are scum. Both of them. As the case proceeds forward, Jacob decides to accept a plea bargain. Jacob stands up in court and he says, well, the plan was to kidnap the child and keep her as a sex toy for the two of us. Melissa also enjoys rough sex and edge games. In the alternative lifestyle, you bring someone to the edge of death to enhance their orgasm. He puts the belt around her neck in a manner of erotic asphyxia. Jacob says something went wrong, and and she died during this experience. When she dies, he panics, and he throws gas everywhere, kidnaps the 5-year-old girl, ignites the place, and runs away. So at the end of the day, Jacob Kenda gets 52 years in the Minnesota State Penitentiary. I would have handled that completely differently. If anybody needs a bullet, it's Jacob Kenda.
I'll never believe she died of an accident. I think all along the plan was to kill her.
Melissa didn't know she wasn't part of the long-term plan. She was going to be dead and burned, and Jacob was going to take the little girl.
For Brittany, it's hard for her to talk about what happened, but she makes it through. She's still the rock that she was. The way I parent now is I baby them because I never know if it's going to be the last day I'll see them. Parenting is really difficult now. That's what makes it hard as a mom. Sorry.
You do your best to separate what you're doing at work from your family life, and sometimes you just can't.
Is it okay if I come in?
The Mariana Trench is child's play compared to the depth of depravity in humans. Doesn't happen in Mother Nature, not in the animal kingdom. Humans are disappointing in so many ways. That's what makes them so dangerous.
I, Lt.Joe Kenda, have spent a lifetime looking into the dark, jagged crevices of a human soul. I have seen the wreckage left behind by men who think they are clever, only to be undone by their own arrogance. You see, the thing about human beings is that they are creatures of habit, and their most predictable habit is stupidity. They believe they can craft a perfect lie, stitch it together with half-truths, and walk away clean. They are almost always wrong. I tell you, this case involving Nick Cordova is a textbook study in the banality of evil and the pathetic, clumsy attempt of a man trying to outrun his own shadow. Listen close. Nick Cordova was a man who worked for a living, a man who built something with his own 2 hands. He was a father, a husband, and by all accounts, a man who understood the weight of responsibility. Then you have his partner, David Sweetman. Now, whenever you hear the term partner in my line of work, your ears should perk up. It is often the closest proximity to the person who wants to see you erased. Sweetman was a man who seemed to view life as a ledger where he was always entitled to more than he earned. He was a man with a past, a history of playing fast and loose with the rules, and a deep-seated obsession with money that outweighed any human connection. The timeline is a jagged line of inconsistencies. You have a man, Nick, shot in the head, his life extinguished in an instant while his wife and children watch the horror unfold on a screen. Think about the cruelty of that. A modern tragedy played out in real time. Then there is Sweetman, acting the part of the distraught partner, pacing, hysterical, handing over a gun as if he were presenting a peace offering. It is a performance, one that lacks a conviction of true grief. And the lies, they just pile up like snow in an alleyway. He says he gave his money to the intruders. Then the police find $1,000 in his pocket. He says he was knocked unconscious, yet he manages to move around, to play the victim, all while the truth is screaming from the floor where his partner lay bleeding. I look at the victim, Nick, and I see a man who sensed a cold breath of betrayal on his neck. He knew. He felt the shifting atmosphere in his own office. He saw the money disappearing from the company accounts. He saw the man he trusted becoming a stranger, a predator. He was terrified, and he was right to be. And then there's the perpetrator, hiding behind a narrative of 2 random men in masks. A robbery gone wrong, a story so thin you could read a newspaper through it. Why the empty box of Freon? Why the stage struggle? It is the work of an amateur who thinks he is a mastermind. He played his hand, but he played it with the shaking fingers of a man who knows he is already lost. The police work in this case leaves a bitter taste in my mouth. It is a slow, agonizing process, often hindered by the very bureaucracy that is supposed to facilitate justice. When a man is killed in such a fashion, every second, every shred of evidence, every inconsistency must be squeezed to the truth. When you have a partner who is already under a cloud of suspicion, who has a history of deceit, and who stands to benefit financially from a death, you do not let him walk away because of a grainy video. You hold him. You break him. You dismantle his reality until the truth is the only thing left standing. I have spent my years in rooms with men just like Sweetman. They are all the same. They possess a profound contempt for the truth and a childish belief that they are the smartest person in the room. But they always crack. It is just a matter of time and pressure. The tragedy here is not just that Nick is gone, but that the wheels of justice are spinning in the mud, stalling while a family waits for an answer that should have been provided years ago. It is a failure of resolve. It is a failure of the spirit. And I tell you, it haunts me because I know that in the silence between the questions and the answers, the truth is just waiting to be pulled into the light. It is time they stop looking at the shadows and start looking at the man holding the candle. Human beings are strange creatures. They kill for the most ridiculous reasons you can imagine, but every now and then, you encounter a story that makes you question the very fabric of the system designed to protect us. My. Today we look at the death of Laura Sweetman. I tell you, this one makes my blood run cold, not just because of the act, but because of the apathy that followed. You have to be kidding me. When you look into the mind of a predator like David Sweetman, you are looking at a master manipulator. He spent years building a facade of an all-American family, a varsity football player turned businessman, while underneath, he was rotting away with narcissism and a deep need for control. He did not just want a wife. He wanted an extension of himself that he could break down and reshape. He belittled her, he lied, he kept secrets, and when she finally found the courage to see him for what he was, his world of control began to crumble, and a narcissist does not handle loss of control well. Laura, on the other hand, was living a nightmare. Imagine being a brilliant pediatric neurologist, saving children every single day, yet feeling utterly trapped in your own living room. Her internal world was a shattered mirror. She went from being a woman with no confidence to a woman who started to find her strength, only to have her wings clipped by a man who threatened to destroy her existence. She was afraid, and that fear was not imaginary. It was a survival instinct that she was finally listening to. She planned her escape. She secured her life. But the predator was already one step ahead, or so he thought. When she was found in that bathtub, unresponsive, with the water calm and the scene staged, it was the final insult to her memory. The authorities, they looked at this. They saw a woman with a clean toxicology report. They saw a history of what they called a heart attack that left no physical trace, and they folded their hands. They called it undetermined. Undetermined. That is just a polite word for lazy. You have people with checkered pasts, like a medical examiner who lets children touch human brains, and a lab director with a conviction for grand theft, handling the evidence of a woman life. It is not just incompetence. It is a moral failure. They looked at a woman who was screaming for help through her actions, through her orders of protection, through her desperate calls, and they chose to look the other way because it was easier, it was cheaper, it was faster to close the book on Laura Sweetman than to open the door to the ugly truth. They treated her case like a discarded piece of paper, and in doing so, they gave her killer the ultimate victory. They allowed him to walk free, to continue his life, while Laura was left in silence. We are talking about a woman who wore colorful clothes to her own funeral because she was vibrant, because she was full of life, and yet the system treated her like an afterthought. I tell you, justice is not a gift that is handed out. It is something that must be fought for, and the failure of the police department to truly investigate this, to dig into the lives of the men she was seeing, to look past the stage scene, is a stain that will not wash away easily. We must remember her not as a victim of a system, but as a woman who fought until the very end. And it is our responsibility to make sure her voice is finally heard, because if we do not, who will? You see, human beings are strange creatures. They commit atrocity for reasons so trivial, so utterly mundane, that it makes you want to hang your head in shame for the human race. And then you have a case like Stephanie Casper, a beautiful 18-year-old girl standing on the precipice of adulthood, full of life, full of promise, only to have her future snatched away in the blink of an eye. I tell you, it makes me sick. You have to be kidding me if you think this was just a crime of passion or some random act of violence. No, this was methodical. This was calculated. This was the work of a predator who treated a human life as if it were nothing more than garbage to be discarded by a riverbank. Let us sit here for a moment and look at the facts. We are talking about the summer of 1969. A simpler time, they say, but evil does not care about the calendar. Stephanie was working her shift at the restaurant, minding her own business, and then she simply vanished. She walked out that door, and she never came back. When they found her, scattered in pieces, it told me everything I needed to know about the person who did this. This was not a panic killer. This was someone with skill, someone with patience, and someone with a terrifying amount of time. You do not dismember a body like that unless you are cold, calculated, and entirely detached from the humanity of your victim. Look at the victims, the ones who are no longer here to speak for themselves. Stephanie was a kind girl. She had secrets, yes, but her secret was just that she loved the wrong person according to the narrow minds of her time. She was kind to the neighborhood children. She looked out for others. She was a daughter who had dreams. She was human in every way that the monster who took her was not. And the monster? Well, look at the suspects. You have a boyfriend who was just an easy target because of the color of his skin, a father being whispered about because of some sick rumor, a coworker who tells tales of Hawaii, and others who leave trails of broken lives in their wake. Everyone has a story, but only one of them is a truth. I have spent my life looking into the eyes of men who think they are smarter than the law. I have seen the way they squirm when the logic of their lives begins to fall apart. You see, the evidence tells a story if you are patient enough to listen. The newspaper, the cigarette butts, the clothing, the way the body was treated. These are not just items. They are footprints left behind by a coward who thought he could hide in the shadows of the woods. The fact that the killer was moving across counties, dropping pieces of a young girl's life along the way like he was taking out the trash, tells me he knew the area. He felt comfortable there. He owned those back roads. People ask me, Kenda, how do you handle it? How do you look at the aftermath of such brutality and keep going? I tell them, you do it for the victims. You do it because they cannot ask for justice themselves. Stephanie Casper deserved to see her 19th birthday. She deserved to fall in love, to grow old, to have a life. Instead, she became a case file, a cold, hard string of evidence for detectives to sift through for decades. It is a tragedy of the highest order. The cruelty of a human being who can take a life and then treat that life with such profound disrespect is something I will never understand. Nor do I want to. We search for answers. We follow every lead, no matter how small, no matter how many years have passed. Because justice delayed is not always justice denied, but it is a heavy burden to carry. Every time a new name surfaces, every time a new lead comes from a place you never expected, like a listener show calling in, it gives you a sliver of hope that the truth might finally see the light of day. And we owe that to Stephanie. We owe it to every family that has had to live with the hollow ache of an unsolved murder sitting at their dinner table for 50 years. Conscience is a heavy thing, my friend, and sooner or later, the truth has a way of finding its way to the surface, just like those remains by the river. It is just a matter of who is standing there to finally see it. Wrestled in high school, the one who seemed to possess a strength that defied the ordinary. After graduating from college with a degree in finance, he moved through life with purpose and focus. He co-founded a company called Physical Therapy Resources, which grew from a local enterprise into a national beacon of success. Yet, for Steve, success was not merely about the bottom line. It was about the people. He retired at the age of 41, a year later than he had originally planned, simply because he was so dedicated to the work he was doing. When he finally walked away from the business world, he did not walk away from his passion for people. He turned his focus to mentoring, helping young men carve out their own paths, offering his time, his resources, and his wisdom without hesitation. His personal life, however, was a journey in itself. Steve was a man who craved a deep intellectual and spiritual connection. He wanted a partner who was as focused and determined as he was, someone who could match his zest for life. For years, he searched, remaining the life of every party, the one who would get up to make a toast, the one who would ad-lib with such sincerity that it could bring a room to tears. He was a natural entertainer, the glue that kept his family laughing and calm during the most stressful times. In late 2009, seeking a change of pace, Steve moved from Florida to North Carolina. He loved the outdoors, the way the air felt crisp, the simple pleasure of a long walk. It was there that he met Lana Walsh, a nurse who was 12 years his junior. To many, she seemed like a wallflower, quiet and reserved, a stark contrast to Steve's gigantic personality. But to Steve, she was a missing piece. He was enchanted by her. He would walk through life arm in arm with her, his affection for her evident in every glance, every touch. He began to call her his Lana Sue, a term of endearment that reflected the deep, grounding peace he felt in her presence. They shared a life that, to the outside observer, looked like the beginning of a beautiful, long future. They got dogs, Guinness and Sadie, and settled into a daily rhythm of affection and companionship. In November 2013, Steve and Lana were married at their home in Charlotte. It was a beautiful, intimate event where the love between them seemed to shine brightly. Not long after, they moved to their forever home on the banks of Lake Wylie in South Carolina. The house was like something from a postcard, a gorgeous blue home sitting on the water, filled with Steve's beloved antiques and art. They were closer to family, closer to Lana's son and grandchildren, and life seemed to be moving in a direction of quiet, golden contentment. Steve was a man who loved to play, whether it was a game of Scrabble or a silly children's game with his nieces and nephews. He was a giant teddy bear, a man who would happily get down on the floor to play with the kids, a man who found joy in the simplest of interactions. For 5 years, their life appeared to be a portrait of stability. But in June 2018, the first cracks appeared. Steve suddenly fell ill. He complained of dizziness, nausea, and vertigo. He had been working in the garden, feeling the sun on his face, when he began to feel unwell. He spent 36 hours in what seemed like a haze, sleeping heavily, unable to shake the sickness. As a nurse, Lana cared for him, or so it seemed to the world. When his sister, Rosie, called to check in, she was told that he was recovering, that he had just been exhausted. And indeed, 2 weeks later, Steve seemed to bounce back. He hosted a 4th of July party that was as vibrant and joyous as ever. He was a Steve everyone knew and loved, dancing, kissing his wife, living life with an open heart. But on July 21st, 2018, the world changed forever. A call went out to the emergency services in York County. Steve Clayton had collapsed and died. When the authorities arrived, they found him at the base of a staircase. Lana was there, distraught, telling the officers that Steve had been struggling with vertigo for days, that he had stood up, become dizzy, and fallen. The scene appeared to be a tragic, natural occurrence. There were no signs of a struggle, no evidence of a disturbance. The coroner, observing the physical state of his body, suggested it might have been a heart attack. The family was devastated. When the news reached his nephew, Nick, and his sister, Rosie, the shock was profound. It felt impossible. Steve was a man of such vitality. How could he simply be gone? As the family began to navigate the tragedy, they started to notice things that did not sit right. They discovered that the mattress where Steve had spent his final days was stained with human waste. suggesting a level of neglect that was entirely inconsistent with the man Steve was. He was a man who valued cleanliness and order. Furthermore, Lana claimed that Steve had no will, a statement that seemed completely at odds with his meticulous, accountant-like nature. He was a man who always planned, always prepared. Driven by a gut feeling that something was deeply wrong, the family pushed for an autopsy and a toxicology report. The results were chilling. They revealed the presence of several substances, including marijuana, temazepam, and Benadryl, but most shockingly, they found tetrahydrozoline, the active ingredient in over-the-counter eye drops. This substance, colorless, odorless, and tasteless, is not meant for ingestion. In large quantities, it is deadly. It restricts blood flow, stresses the heart, and shuts down the central nervous system. The investigation that followed uncovered reality that was difficult to fathom. Lana, the woman who had been his caregiver, had been poisoning him slowly over a period of days. The very person he trusted, the one he had loved and shared his home with, had been using a substance that, when administered correctly, should have been harmless, but when weaponized, became a tool of destruction. When confronted, the facade crumbled. Lana admitted to the actions, claiming that Steve had been abusive and that she was seeking some form of twisted retribution. Though those who knew Steve well, the many people he had mentored and cared for, spoke of a man who was incapable of such cruelty. They described him as a gentle soul, a man who brought out the best in everyone. The judicial process was long and painful. On January 16, 2020, Lana pleaded guilty to voluntary manslaughter and tampering with a drug or food product. She was sentenced to 25 years in prison. She would never admit to intending to kill him, but the evidence told a story of a slow, methodical poisoning, a betrayal of the deepest kind. In the aftermath, the family was left to grapple with the loss of a man who had meant so much to so many. They did not just lose a husband, a brother, or an uncle. They lost the laughter that filled their homes, the voice that greeted them with a hearty hello, the wisdom that guided them, and the generous spirit that made their world a better place. Steve Clayton was a man who had dedicated his life to lifting others up, and in his absence, those who loved him have had to find a way to carry his light forward. They remember him not for the tragic way he left this world, but for the beautiful, generous, and loving way he lived within it. His legacy remains in the young men he mentored, the family he held together, and the joy he brought into every room he entered. Though he was stolen from those who loved him, the memory of Steve Clayton endures, a testament to a life lived with a big heart and an even bigger spirit. This is the story of a man who understood the true value of life. It is a story of a successful and generous businessman who walked through his years with a spirit as vibrant as the sun. Hello, hello, hello. That was the greeting that often preceded his presence, a jovial sound that signaled joy was about to arrive. He was a man who met a nurse with a heart that seemed at the time to match the size of his own. She struck everyone as being very quiet, but very sweet and very nice. He fell head over heels for her. He could not hide the feelings he had for her, for he was very much in love. Yet, when an unexpected sickness consumed their marriage, those who loved him knew that there was something was very wrong. Money, as it turns out, is no protection. This is not a natural death. Tonight, we celebrate the joining of two wonderful people. It is the 10th of March in the year 2007 in Miami. It is a big day for the bride, Rosemary Clayton, and her family. She is finally marrying her love, William Leslie. That is the oldest brother of the bride, the 52-year-old Steve Clayton, who is proudly walking her down the aisle. 11 months prior to that wedding, the family lost their father. Rosemary asked her brother if he would step in. Of course, there were a lot of tears. She could not imagine anybody else standing in place for her father. Who gives this woman to be married to this man? Steve did so in the memory of his father. It was sentimental to be gathered at something so special, where their father was not physically present. With the passing of their father, Steve became the head of the family. Though he never had children of his own, He was always a father figure to his siblings. When his father and mother were married, Steve was just about 2 or 3 years old. He had 4 sisters, and Rosemary is the youngest. He was 10 years older than her. There really was not a moment when Steve was not in the life of his sister. Steve was her big brother, and he was her hero. He was everything a little girl would want in a big brother. He played football, and he wrestled in high school, which made him seem larger than life. After high school, Steve graduated from college with a degree in finance. He quickly matured into a shrewd businessman. Steve and a partner started a company called Physical Therapy Resources, which eventually became a national company with physical therapy centers all over the country. Steve and Rosemary met at work. He was in the hospital, and she was in the same hospital, and that is how they met and became friends. He was very successful and eventually sold his interest in his business. Basically, from that point on, he was retired. His goal was to retire at the age of 40. He missed it by 1 year, retiring when he was 41. Selling his business freed up Steve to do whatever he wanted, and what he wanted to do was give back. He would mentor a large group of young men, helping them start up a business or helping them find out what direction they wanted their lives to go. Steve was extremely generous with not only his resources, but with his time, and Steve always had time for his family. In a home video, Rosemary filmed Steve as he teased their Uncle Max. It was special. Their father was not so funny. He was more serious, much more serious. He was always serious. But where did that money come from? Steve? I do not know. When his sister Rosemary got married, it was a good humor of Steve that made him the life and soul of the occasion. Please get up, Steve. Steve was always the first guy to get up to give a toast anywhere. Hello, hello, hello. It was always ad-lib for him, from the heart. This is my way of getting away from the emotional stuff, he said. William, thank you so much. I am not going to look at you. Thank you so much for making my sister so happy and my dad. Steve was never one to hide his emotions. My dad told me, before he passed, to take care of my sister, to honor you, and he loved you very much. I have to get serious here. All right, I am cool. All right, you guys are great companions. You are great partners. And my sister, I have never seen her happier. After the speeches, Steve stepped up for the father-daughter dance. He came up, and they got ready to dance. And before the music started, they had a very, very powerful moment. A surprise recording of their dearly departed father played out. The best moment of my day was when you were climbing my knee. You would say, Daddy, I love you. I miss those days. I really do, because I love you too. He had so many duties that day. He was the brother. He was the best man. He was the entertainment. And he was the one that kept everyone calm and kept everyone laughing. He was a natural at it. Despite his success and close network of family and friends, the romantic life of Steve had been rocky. He looked for a partner that was as focused, determined, loving, and caring as he was. And that is a tall order to fill. Now, at 52 years of age, his family figured it would take a very special person to sweep him off his feet. Steve was always looking for somebody on a level he could connect with emotionally, intellectually, and spiritually. 3 years later, that is exactly what happened. In late 2009, Steve decided to leave his home state of Florida for a change of pace in North Carolina. He really loved being physical. He loved walking. He loved anything to do with being outdoors. So, when he moved from South Florida to North Carolina, he had the opportunity to be outdoors a lot more. Within just a few months, Steve announced that he had met someone special. He seemed to have a glow that he had been missing for a little while, and he was excited. Her name was Lana Walsh, 12 years his junior. She was a nurse who grew up in Oklahoma. She struck his sister as being very sweet, very quiet, but very sweet. This quietness stood out because Steve was not very quiet. The personality of Steve was gigantic. She was more like a wallflower. Despite their differences, Steve was sure she was the one. They were very affectionate with each other, always arm in arm. Steve was always hugging her, squeezing her and kissing her. I felt happy for my brother, Rosemary recalled. So, of course, anybody that he loved, I was going to embrace. It was not long before Steve asked Lana to move in with him. After they got to know each other quite a bit more, Steve persuaded her to come to Charlotte. Steve could be very convincing. They added some new additions to the family. The first dog that Steve and Lana got was Guinness, an Italian greyhound. They loved the breed, and so they decided that they wanted another one, whose name was Sadie. With Lana, Steve finally felt he had found his missing piece. Steve always had great things to say about her. He referred to her as his Lana Sue. He could not hide the feelings he had for her. He was very much in love with her. I think Steve found himself well grounded with Lana. I felt like Steve found a certain sense of peace with her. Steve Clayton came to North Carolina for a change from his old life and found a whole new future. When Steve Clayton danced with his sister at her wedding, he dreamed of finding his own special someone. Now, 6 years later, he was about to marry the love of his life, a nurse named Lana Walsh. It was a lovely day in November of 2013. Many of the family had traveled to North Carolina just to be there and enjoy that day with him, and he made it very special for everyone. Lana and Steve's wedding took place at their house in Charlotte. It was such a beautiful event. You could just see the love. Both of them were beaming. Soon after, the couple decided to relocate and move into their forever home, just over the border in South Carolina, on the banks of Lake Wylie. It was like something on a postcard. This gorgeous ocean blue home, sitting on a gorgeous piece of lakefront property. It was very lovely. The couple set about refurbishing their new home, decorating it with a collection of artworks and antiques that Steve possessed. Steve was the kind of person for whom objects were very personal, and he was very proud of his possessions. They were all unique in some way. The move allowed the couple to indulge in their love of nature. If there was something fun and outdoorsy to do, he was going to be the first one there, and he was gung-ho about it. Their relocation to South Carolina also meant the pair were closer to the extended family of Steve. His nephew remembered, "I married a niece of Steve in 2010, so I officially became his nephew." We hung out with Steve and Lana a lot when they moved up here. We would go out to dinner with them. We would go to concerts. We would go to special events every holiday. They were also just a 30-minute drive from the son and grandchildren of Lana, and the pair never said no to a bit of babysitting. Steve had a way with children because Steve had always been a child at heart. He was the kind of guy who would get down on the floor and play with the kids. Pop goes the weasel, with the kids around. There was never a dull moment in the Clayton household. Steve enjoyed playing all kinds of games. Whether it was Scrabble or even a silly child's game, he was fully present. He would ask the children to spin the spinner and turn the handles. Steve was a huge teddy bear. They loved to play with him. He always had kids hanging on him. Lana was always game for some fun, too. They seemed to be a team, a thriving unit. 5 years into their marriage, Steve and Lana appeared to be thriving. But in June of 2018, Steve suddenly fell ill. He said he felt dizzy, complaining of vertigo. He said that his ear hurt and that he felt nauseous. He started getting sick in the yard. His sister felt real bad for him. She knew that he had had issues with vertigo prior to this. He said he had been very ill and did not know exactly what was wrong. He remembered that he was working out in the garden and started to feel dizzy, nauseous, and had a headache. He thought that maybe he had gotten sunstroke. As a nurse, Lana thought the best thing for Steve was bed rest. He said he remembered laying down, and the next time he opened his eyes, 36 hours had passed. Worried, Rosemary called Lana to see if she could explain the mystery illness of Steve. She asked her what she thought was going on, because it is very odd for any person of any age to lose 36 hours of time. Lana said that he was fine, and that she was watching him, making sure he was okay. Though he had never been ill like this before, Lana thought that Steve was just exhausted. The sister felt reassured that Lana was there to take care of him in any way that she could, especially with her knowledge as a nurse. It seemed the larger-than-life energy of Steve was starting to catch up with him. But just 2 weeks later, it appeared the treatment of Lana had worked. Steve was back to his old self, throwing a party for the 4th of July. That party was just as great as every other party they had been to there. Steve was his normal, affectionate self. Everybody had a great time. Steve was dancing with Lana as they celebrated in style. He grabbed Lana right away, and everyone followed suit and joined in. Things were good at the Clayton home. No one doubted the lives of Lana and Steve were going to be happy and long. On July 21st, 2018, a call came into the York County 911 Center. Police units arrived on the scene, and body camera footage recorded by the responding officer, Sergeant Day, captured what they found. As they walked into the front door, there was Steve right at the bottom of the grand staircase. Unfortunately, at that point, he was gone. He was dead. You could hear the officers whispering and talking in low voices because Lana Clayton was just around the corner, distraught and crying. They did not want to say anything that was disturbing to her. Sergeant Day needed to talk with the wife of Steve, Lana, to find out what had happened. She told Sergeant Day that Steve had been suffering dizziness for 2 days. Stephen had been very ill with vertigo. She claimed that she had found him Thursday morning when he stood up, got very dizzy and collapsed, and that she had to help him upstairs. And since that time, he had not been back downstairs. Miss Clayton, you were outside. You were working outside? I was mowing the lawn real quick, and when I came in, I fell down. I am so sorry. I tried to take a blanket underneath me, but I could not. Despite her training, Lana was unable to render aid to Steve. That was when she panicked because she knew she could not do anything further to help him. So she immediately ran out when she heard a motorcycle coming by to wave someone down to call 911. The nephew, Nick French, was on duty as a police officer when he got the news. His mother called and said Uncle Steve died. It was just a sense of disbelief. He knew it was for real, but it did not really sink in. So he got there as quick as he could. He kept thinking, how? Why? The phone rang for Rosemary, 700 miles away, and she saw it was her nephew calling. He said, Uncle Steve died. Uncle Steve died. That was not possible. It was not possible. How could he be gone? She could not believe it. Sergeant Day checked for any signs that Steve may have been attacked. This looked like it was probably a natural death, but you never know. So Sergeant Day went upstairs to look to see what had happened. That would be a little unnerving, to go through a labyrinth of a house that you had never seen before, because you never know what could be around the corner. You could tell that there did not appear to be a sign of struggle. No other signs of someone else being up there having done something to him. Nothing significant at all. In the master bedroom, the bed sheet was all rumpled up, but nothing to suggest Steve had any kind of struggle. It looked as if the cause of death would not be a mystery for the coroner. The coroner could not see any contusions or bruises. Nothing suggested Steve fell down the staircase. It looked as though Steve made it to the bottom of the stairs and then collapsed. The coroner said, I believe he had a heart attack. Back in the living room, Sergeant Day told Lana what they thought had happened. While Lana digested the news, Nick and his family helped with cleaning up. They wanted to make the house still comfortable enough for her. They knew she was going to be exhausted, but they were shocked at what they found in the bedroom. When they went upstairs, they immediately noticed the smell. It was a smell of human filth, excrement, and urine. They looked around, and there were huge urine discoloration spots in the middle of the bed. The soiled mattress raised some questions. They thought the amount of urine that it would take to soak through this mattress meant Steve had to have been going to the bathroom in this bed for days. So they immediately thought, we have to get this mattress out of the room. It was extremely heavy. They took the mattress and tossed it out of the house. When Rosemary talked with Lana on the phone, she asked her, how did Steve get so ill? When she spoke with Lana much later in that evening, she asked her what happened. Lana said he had not been feeling well for a few days. Rosemary asked, why did you not call somebody? Why did you not let somebody know? Lana said, well, he was starting to feel better. She said Steve never called because he had been sleeping heavily and had misplaced his cell phone a week earlier. Lana claimed that it had been missing for several days. But the brother of Rosemary was never, ever without his phone. He was always attached to his phone. It went everywhere with him. It was at that point where Rosemary really felt like something very sinister was going on. Steve's sister asked his widow, Lana, about his will. Steve and Rosemary had talked many times about what it was that he wanted to do when that time came, and he wanted to be buried in that beautiful cemetery in Fort Lauderdale. When she asked Lana, she said there was no will. Lana had already made the arrangements. Steve was due to be cremated, and she was planning his memorial. On August 4th, 2018, Lana held a service for Steve at their home. It was highly emotional. Everybody there felt such a deep connection to Steve. It was just hard to stay calm. Even though it was supposed to be a celebration of his life, it just could not help but feel the deep, deep sorrow that everybody felt. At the memorial, Rosemary and the family were surprised to find Lana had already started to clear out the belongings of Steve. She had already begun taking all of his clothes and all of his personal items, and she donated them all to the Veterans Administration. Rosemary was almost knocked off her feet to see the number of empty hangers in that closet, with not a single stitch of clothes. A lot of watches were missing. A lot of jewelry was missing. His wedding ring was missing. The claims of Lana about Steve not having will raise further suspicions. There's absolutely no logic in the brother, an accountant and a person who is meticulous with his finances, not having a will. The family felt like something was not adding up. They were all on the same page. They knew something was going on, so they called the medical examiner's office and said, please do an autopsy. And at the very least, if you're not going to do that, do a toxicology. They agreed to it. When the autopsy report came in, it listed signs of heart disease and pointed to death by natural causes. But they had to wait for the toxicologist report to come back to finally make an actual finding. It would take a few weeks before those results arrived. So they waited on pins and needles for the truth to come out. They just knew that there was something very wrong. When the toxicology report on the blood of Steve Clayton came back, it was shocking. It showed traces of several sedatives, including marijuana, temazepam, and Benadryl. But that was not all. The biggest shock in the toxicology results was tetrahydrozoline, also known as THC. It is the active ingredient in eye drops like Visine or other over-the-counter eye drops. THC is not ever meant to be ingested. Given in small doses, it makes you feel very ill. It makes you nauseous. It makes you dizzy. It will make you pass out eventually. But in large quantities, it is deadly. It shuts your central nervous system down, and it will kill you. The detectives learned that THC could limit the blood supply to vital organs, leading to a heart attack. When the body camera footage was reviewed, the Visine was on the tall dresser that was away from the bed. That was where he could not get up to get the Visine. Now, it was very clear. This was not a natural death. Detective Motes needed to have a talk with Lana Clayton. 5 weeks after the sudden death of her husband, Lana Clayton was questioned by detectives. They wanted to know more about the medications found in the blood of Steve. It was a long list, but there was no mention of THC, the drug that killed Steve. It is colorless, odorless, and tasteless, which makes it the perfect thing to give to someone if you want to poison them. The level of THC in the blood of Steve was so high that it was clear it was the cause of death. It is a lethal level, no matter what way you look at it. The detectives pressed on. Somehow or another, there was a large amount of Visine in his system. So that was what they were trying to get to the bottom of. The detectives asked, I know he puts the Visine in his coffee. He puts it in there every day. What do you know about it? Lana replied, what do I know about it? I know it makes you have diarrhea. There were basically two things that the police were now considering. One, he was poisoned, and there was foul play. Two, he ingested it on his own, whether it was intentional or unintentional. As police probed the relationship of Steve and Lana, they asked, "How has your life been?" Lana said, "Sometimes we would have fun and everything, and then sometimes I would be on eggshells. All the time I was on eggshells." Lana claimed that Steve had a dark side. He can be really nasty. What does nasty Steve look like? He is really verbally abusive, calling me names. Like what would he call you? I do not know. Stupid bitch. I do not know. Just all kind of things. I could see it escalating until you notice. Just try and stay out his way. After the interview with Lana, the detectives ordered a search of the house. They were looking for cups or glasses that had a residue in them. They were looking for anything they could find that helped them determine what could have caused this. Anything document-wise that would show trouble in the marriage. But during that time, Lana told the officer that she wanted to speak again with Detective Moats. Detective Moats recorded what Lana had to say. "I told you a little bit about Stephen. It was worse than what I told you. He was verbally and physically abusive. Lana, for God's sake. And yell at me and call me names. His anger built up, you know. I would do something that would irritate him until the point where he would explode. After he had that incident, which he said it was vertigo, and I was taking care of him and everything, but I was still so angry. And my girlfriend at work told me, you want to get even with somebody, you know, put Visine in a drink, it will cause diarrhea. It was then that Lana dropped a bombshell. When I saw that Visine on the table, it just came back to me, and I just took and squirted it. And what did you squirt it into? His water. Into his water? So you do not know the full amount? I mean, you just squeezed. I think I put the whole thing in. So the whole bottle? I think I did. I squeezed it hard. I just saw it there, and I just did it. It was a damning confession, but the detectives could not arrest Lana just yet. They got their ducks in a row as far as what charges would be made. And they were ready to come back the next day to arrest Lana Clayton. But early that morning, they got a call from one of the neighbors of Lana. They found notes of suicide. They were afraid that she had harmed herself. She knew the police were coming back the next day, and she knew they would have warrants for arrest. She turned the gas on, went upstairs, and took some pills to kill herself. They found her unconscious in her bed. She was taken to the hospital, where she was treated and ultimately released, and then immediately arrested on the charges of murder and tampering with food items. The family was informed of the arrest of Lana. A detective from York County called a nephew, Nick, and said, "Hey, Nick, I just want to bring you up to speed here." Lana confessed. Nick pulled over right away. It hit him like a ton of bricks, literally like a baseball bat to the face. He answered the phone, and Rosemary was on the other end screaming that she killed him. On January 16th, 2020, Lana accepted a plea deal and admitted guilt on charges of voluntary manslaughter and tampering with a drug or food product. The original indictment was for murder. You were pleading to a lesser offense, voluntary manslaughter. My own knowledge of it was by watching movies and the cause of discomfort and diarrhea. Lana insisted she never intended for Steve to die and just wanted revenge for his abuse. But his friends and family did not buy that Steve was ever abusive. She tried to assassinate the character of Steve because other people who knew him and who he had. Men came forward to say he was a wonderful person. There was no abuse of any sort with Stephen. She was trying to do whatever she could to save herself from a very, very, very long sentence, and possibly the death penalty. But he was a gentle soul, not capable of harming someone. Based on the toxicology report, the prosecutors believe Steve suffered for 3 days before dying. Lana told them that the fatal dose was on Thursday morning. But we know as a matter of scientific fact from the toxicologist that is impossible. He would have died Thursday morning if he had ingested that Thursday morning. For him to have been sick all of that time, it indicated that she continually gave him medication throughout that time, poisoning him with Visine little by little. And Lana, a nurse, never sought to help him after the initial poisoning. Stephen would not have stayed in a urine-soaked mattress. He was a clean freak. He would not have stood for such a thing. He was too weak to get up and move. There was no phone in the house. There was no landline, so he could not call somebody. So this put him in a situation of being tortured, with no way to get help. And so finally, she knew Saturday, that is it. And she squeezed a whole bottle of Visine into his water, had him drink it, and then went out to mow the grass, so she did not have to watch the horror of his death. Instead of a nurse that helps, she was the nurse from hell. 53-year-old Lana Clayton was sentenced to 25 years in prison. She never admitted that she intended to kill Steve, but the facts showed otherwise. The family felt like there was no penalty that would have been great enough for Lana. This was 3 days of methodically poisoning the best friend of his sister and then killing him. The thought process that had to go into her putting on this charade. And she carried that right on through till the end. And that is the definition of a monster. But Lana almost got away with it. There almost was not an autopsy. If there had not been an autopsy, the ruling of the coroner would have been that this was likely a heart episode, and it was natural causes. The truth is she did this to herself, you know. Had she been just the same quiet, gentle Lana, grieving the loss of Steve, no one would have had any suspicion whatsoever. Although Lana insisted the death of Steve was unintentional. His family and the prosecution believed it was a deliberate act motivated by financial gain. One obvious and glaring motive was the wealth of Steve. Without a will in the state of South Carolina, everything goes to the spouse. So Lana would know, if Steve is gone, I get everything. If somebody wanted to do something malicious like this, all they had to do was get rid of the will, and everything belonged to them. The family tried to move on without Steve in their lives. Hello. I mean, I miss a lot about Steve, but I miss his voice. I miss hearing his voice. This is my way of, getting away from the emotional stuff. I think what I miss about Steve is his over-the-top personality. This big, boisterous, gregarious character that enters a room and just takes over everything. Steve was an amazing person. It has been difficult not having him around. The thing I miss the most about Steve is his laughter and his ability to light up a room. Stephen was stolen from everyone who loved him. In the end, though, the legacy of Steve Clayton is not one of shadows or the terrible act that ended his time on this earth. His legacy is the love he shared, the generosity he showed to the young men he mentored, the humor he brought to every family gathering, and the way he made his sister feel safe and honored. He was a man who lived fully, who walked with kindness, and who, even now, reminds us all that the most important things in life are the bonds we build and the love we leave behind. While his story ends in tragedy, his life remains a testament to the warmth, laughter, and courage that he brought into the world. He was, and always will be, a hero to those who knew him best. This is a story of a man whose spirit was as generous as his success was grand. He was a businessman who built empires, but to those who knew him best, he was simply the heart of the family. He was a man who met a nurse with a soul as kind as his own, and in that meeting, he found a love that he believed would last a lifetime. This is the story of Steve Clayton. The story begins in Miami on the 10th of March, 2007. It was a day of celebration, a day where love was in the air, and for the Clayton family, it was a day that felt bittersweet. Rosemary Clayton, or Rosie as her family affectionately called her, was preparing to walk down the aisle to marry her beloved, William Leslie. It was a beautiful day, yet for the family, it was marked by the absence of a man who should have been standing right there at the center of it all. 11 months prior to this wedding, the family had lost their father. In that void, there stood the head of the family, the oldest brother, 52-year-old Steve Clayton. Steve was the kind of man for whom family was not just a priority, it was his life. Though he had never had children of his own, he had always been a father figure to his 4 sisters. He was 10 years older than his youngest sister, Rosie, and she could not remember a single moment in her life where Steve was not present. He was her hero, the brother who played football, the brother who wrestled in high school, and the man who made the world feel like a much smaller, safer place. After graduating from college with a degree in finance, Steve had matured into a shrewd and successful businessman. He had co-founded a company called Physical Therapy Resources, which had grown into a national enterprise with centers across the entire country. Despite his professional achievements, Steve remained a man of deep humility and humor. He was always the first person to stand up at any gathering to offer a toast, and he never relied on notes. His words always came straight from the heart. At the wedding, he spoke to the groom, thanking him for making his sister so happy. And he spoke of their father, honoring his memory with a warmth that moved everyone in attendance. He was the entertainment, the one who kept the peace, and the one who made everyone laugh. Following a successful career, Steve achieved his goal of retiring at the age of 41. With his business sold, he dedicated himself to the art of living well and giving back. He spent his time mentoring young men, helping them start businesses, and guiding them toward their own futures. He was generous with his resources, and even more generous with his time. Years later, in late 2009, seeking a change of pace, Steve decided to leave his home state of Florida and move to North Carolina. He loved the outdoors, he loved to walk, and he loved being active. It was not long after this move that Steve announced he had met someone special. Her name was Lana Walsh. She was 12 years his junior, a nurse who had grown up in Oklahoma. To those around him, Lana seemed quiet and sweet, a contrast to Steve, whose personality was, in the words of his family, gigantic. Yet, they were inseparable. They were always arm in arm. And Steve seemed to have found a sense of peace and groundedness that he had been searching for. By November of 2013, the couple was married at their home in Charlotte. Soon after, they relocated to a beautiful home on the banks of Lake Wylie in South Carolina, a place that felt like something out of a postcard. They spent their days decorated with Steve's favorite antiques and artwork, and they enjoyed the simple pleasures of nature. Steve, always a child at heart, loved having family around, and he was a wonderful uncle to the children, often found playing on the floor with them, never too serious to engage in a game or a laugh. For years, life seemed to move in a rhythm of happiness. But in June of 2018, a shadow began to fall over the Clayton household. Steve, usually the picture of health and vitality, began to complain of vertigo and nausea. As a nurse, Lana suggested that he rest, and for a while, it seemed to work. By the time the 4th of July arrived, Steve was back to his old self, hosting a party where he danced and laughed with the people he loved. However, the peace was short-lived. On the 21st of July, 2018, a tragic call was made to the authorities. Steve was found at the bottom of the staircase in his home. The scene that greeted the responders was one of profound confusion and sorrow. His wife, Lana, was there, and she explained that Steve had been struggling with his health, suggesting that he had suffered a fall. In the weeks that followed, the family found themselves grappling with questions that had no easy answers. Why had Steve, a man so meticulous about his life, not left a will? Why was his phone missing? And why, when the family entered the master bedroom, did they find a mattress that suggested weeks of suffering? The grief they felt was complicated by a growing sense of unease. They requested an autopsy, a decision that would eventually uncover reality that none of them could have imagined. The toxicology report revealed the presence of substances that had no place in the system of a healthy man. It showed traces of tetrahydrozoline, the active ingredient in common eye drops. When ingested, this substance is dangerous, and in high quantities, it is lethal. It had caused Steve to suffer immensely, limiting the blood supply to his vital organs. The investigation that followed uncovered a calculated and cold reality. Lana, the woman Steve had trusted with his heart, had been administering the poison, causing him to slowly decline over the course of those final days. She had confessed to the authorities that she had used the eye drops, driven by a desire for revenge over perceived grievances in their relationship. In January of 2020, Lana Clayton admitted her guilt, pleading to charges of voluntary manslaughter and tampering with a food product. She was sentenced to 25 years in prison. For the family, the justice served did not replace the man they had lost. Steve Clayton was a man who loved deeply, who lived vibrantly, and who mentored many. He was a brother, an uncle, and a friend whose laughter and presence were the glue that held so many together. While his life ended in a tragedy that shocked all who knew him, his memory remains in the hearts of those who remember him not for how he left this world, but for the light he brought into it while he was here. He was a man who truly knew how to love, and he remains, even now, an indelible part of the lives of all who had the honor of calling him family. This is a story of a successful and generous businessman. He was a man who radiated warmth and optimism, a person whose presence could illuminate even the most ordinary room. This is a tale of his life, his love, and the unfortunate circumstances that led to his passing. He was someone who, upon meeting a nurse with a heart as big as his own, found his life taking a turn he never could have anticipated. She struck him and those around him as being very quiet, but very sweet and very nice. He fell head over heels for her. He could not hide the feelings he had for he was very much in love with her. But when a sickness consumed their marriage, the people who loved him most knew that there was something very wrong. Money is no protection against the cruelty of fate. This is not a natural death, but rather a somber reflection on the life of a man whose heart was filled with nothing but kindness. Welcome. Tonight we celebrate the joining of two wonderful people. It is March 10th, 2007, in the vibrant city of Miami. It is a big day for the bride, Rosemary Clayton, and her entire family. She is finally marrying her love, William Leslie. That is the oldest brother of Rosemary, 52-year-old Steve Clayton, proudly walking her down the aisle. 11 months prior to that wedding, the family lost their father. Rosemary asked her brother if he would step in and walk her down the aisle. Of course, there were a lot of tears shed that day. She could not imagine anybody else standing in the place of her father. When the minister asked who gives this woman to be married to this man, Steve replied with profound emotion, "I do, in the memory of my father." It was incredibly sentimental to be gathered at something so special where their father was not present in the physical sense. With the passing of their father, the brother of Rosemary, Steve, became the head of the family. And though he had never had children of his own, he had always been a father figure to his siblings. When his father and mother were married, Steve was just about 2 or 3 years old. He had 4 sisters, and Rosemary was the youngest. He was 10 years older than her. So there really was not a moment in her life when Steve was not present. Steve was her big brother, and he was her hero. He was everything a little girl would want in a big brother. He played football, and he wrestled in high school. That really made him seem bigger than life to his younger sister. After high school, Steve graduated from college with a degree in finance. He quickly matured into a shrewd businessman. Steve, with a partner, started a company called Physical Therapy Resources, which eventually became a national company with physical therapy centers all over the country. Steve and his sister met at work once in a hospital, and that is how they became friends. He was very successful and eventually sold his interest in his business. Basically, from that point on, he was retired. His goal was to retire at the age of 40. He missed it by 1 year, as he retired when he was 41. Selling his business freed up Steve to do whatever he wanted, and what he wanted to do was give back. He would mentor such a large group of young men, helping them start up a business or helping them find out what direction they wanted their life to go. Steve was extremely generous with not only his resources, but with his time. Steve always had time for his family. Rosemary captured footage as Steve teased their Uncle Max. It was special. Their father was not so funny. He was more serious. Serious, much more serious. He was always serious. But where did that money come from? Steve? I do not know. And when his sister Rosemary got married, it was the good humor of Steve that made him the life and soul of the occasion. Please get up, Steve. Plate. Steve was always the first guy to get up to give a toast anywhere. Hello, hello, hello. It was always ad-lib for him, straight from the heart. This is my way of, getting away from the emotional stuff. William, thank you so much. I am not going to look at you. Thank you so much for making my sister so happy. And my dad. Steve was never one to hide his emotions. My dad told me before he passed to take care of my sister, to honor you, and he loved you very much. I have to get serious here. All right, I am cool. All right, you guys are great companions. You are great partners. And my sister, I have never seen her happier. After the speeches, Steve stepped up for the father-daughter dance. He came up, and they got ready to dance. And before the music started, they had a very, very powerful moment. A surprise recording of their dearly departed father played out. The best moment of my day was when you were climbing my knee. You would say, "Daddy, I love you." I miss those days. I really do. Because I love you too. He had so many duties that day. He was a father figure. He was the best man. He was the entertainment. He was the one that kept everyone calm, kept everyone laughing. He was a natural at it. Despite his success and close network of family and friends, the romantic life of Steve had been rocky. He looked for a partner that was as focused, determined, loving, and caring as he was. And that is a tall order to fill. Now, at the age of 52, his family figured it would take a very special person to sweep him off his feet. Rosemary thought Steve was always looking for somebody on a level he could connect with emotionally, intellectually, and spiritually. But 3 years later, that is exactly what happened. In late 2009, Steve decided to leave his home state of Florida for a change of pace in North Carolina. He really loved being physical. He loved walking. He loved anything to do with being outdoors. So, when he moved from South Florida to North Carolina, he had the opportunity to be outdoors a lot more. Within just a few months, Steve announced that he had met someone special. He seemed to have a glow that he had been missing for a little while, and he was excited. Her name was Lana Walsh, 12 years his junior. She was a nurse who grew up in Oklahoma. She struck Rosemary as being very sweet. Very quiet, but very sweet. And this quiet kind of stood out because Steve was not very quiet. The personality of Steve was gigantic. She was more like a wallflower. Despite their differences, Steve was sure she was the one. They were very affectionate with each other, always arm in arm. Steve was always hugging her, squeezing her, and kissing her. Rosemary felt happy for her brother. So, of course, anybody that he loved, she was going to embrace. It was not long before Steve asked Lana to move in with him. After they got to know each other quite a bit more, Steve persuaded her to come to Charlotte. And, you know, Steve could be very convincing. They added some new additions to the family. The first dog that Steve and Lana got was Guinness, an Italian greyhound. They loved the breed, and so they decided that they wanted another one, and her name was Sadie. With Lana, Steve finally felt he had found his missing piece. Steve always had great things to say about her. He referred to her as his Lana Sue. He could not hide the feelings he had for her. He was very much in love with her. Rosemary felt that Steve found himself well grounded with Lana. She felt like Steve found a certain sense of peace with her. Steve Clayton came to North Carolina for a change from his old life and found a whole new future. When Steve Clayton danced with his sister at her wedding, he dreamed of finding his own special someone. And now, 6 years later, he was about to marry the love of his life, a Veterans Affairs nurse named Lana Walsh. It was a lovely day in November 2013. Many of the family members had traveled to North Carolina just to be there and enjoy that day with him, and he made it very special for everyone. The wedding of Lana and Steve took place at their house in Charlotte. It was such a beautiful event. You could just see the love. Both of them were beaming. Soon after, the couple decided to relocate and move into their forever home just over the border in South Carolina, on the banks of Lake Wiley. It was like something on a postcard. This gorgeous ocean blue home, sitting on a gorgeous piece of lakefront property. It was very lovely. The couple set about refurbishing their new home, decorating it with a collection of artworks and antiques of Steve. Steve was the kind of person for whom objects were very personal, and he was very proud of his possessions. They were all unique in some way. The move allowed the couple to indulge in their love of nature. So, if there was something fun and outdoors to do, he was going to be the first one there, and he was gung-ho about it. Their relocation to South Carolina also meant the pair were closer to the extended family of Steve. His nephew, who married the niece of Steve in 2010, officially became his nephew. He hung out with Steve and Lana a lot when they moved up there. They would go out to dinner with them, they would go to concerts, and they would go to special events every holiday. They were also just a 30-minute drive from the son and grandchildren of Lana, and the pair never said no to a bit of babysitting. Steve had a way with children because Steve had always been a child at heart. So he was the kind of guy that got down on the floor and played with the kids. Pop goes the weasel. And with the kids around, there was never a dull moment in the Clayton household. Here, Lana filmed Steve attempting to describe the limbo while her twin granddaughters watched. We will make Papa do it. So there's a stick, and I got to go like that. And I have got to go under the stick. And I've got to get real low to get under the stick. It is a game. It is a dance. These are dances. You have to tell me how to act it out. Lana was tickled, but the twins were more interested in their ice cream. Steve enjoyed playing all kinds of games, whether it was Scrabble or even a silly child's game. You wanted to get in, do you not? You do you not? Just spin the spinner, and then turn the handles many times. 2, and put your head in the thing. Put your chin on the thing. Okay, A, E, D, F, spin it forward. Both of them are 1. Both of them. Steve was a huge teddy bear. They loved to play with him. He always had kids hanging on him. What number did you get? 3. And Lana was always game for some fun, too. Oh no, it is coming. It is coming up. It does it every time. Here it comes. Here it comes. Cheers. 5 years into their marriage, Steve and Lana appear to be thriving. But in June 2018, Steve suddenly fell ill. He said he felt dizzy, complaining of vertigo. He said that his ear hurt and that he felt nauseous, and he started getting sick in the yard. Rosemary felt real bad for him. She knew that he had had issues with vertigo prior to this. He said he had been very ill and did not know exactly what was wrong. He just remembered that he was working out in the garden, and he started to feel dizzy, a little nauseous, a little dizzy, a headache, and he thought that maybe he had gotten sunstroke. You okay? Yeah. As a nurse, Lana thought the best thing for Steve was bed rest. He said he remembered laying down, and he said the next time he opened his eyes, 36 hours had passed. Worried, Rosemary called Lana to see if she could explain the mystery illness of Steve. She asked her what she thought was going on because that is very odd for any person of any age to lose 36 hours of time. And Lana said that he was fine, and that she was watching him, and she was making sure he was okay, though he had never been ill like this before. Lana thought that Steve was just exhausted. Rosemary felt reassured that Lana was there to take care of him in any way that she could, especially with her knowledge as a nurse. It seemed the larger-than-life energy of Steve was starting to catch up with him. But just 2 weeks later, it appeared the treatment of Lana had worked. Steve was back to his old self, throwing a party for the 4th of July. That party was just as great as every other party they had been to there. Steve was his normal, affectionate self. Everybody had a great time. Here was Steve dancing with Lana as they celebrated in style. He grabbed Lana right away, and the family just kind of followed suit and all joined in. Rosemary remembered watching them hug and him kiss her, and they were completely in love. Things were good at the Clayton home, and no one doubted that the lives of Lana and Steve were going to be happy and long. On July 21st, 2018, a call came into the York County 911 emergency dispatch. Police units arrived on the scene, and body cam footage recorded by responding Officer Sergeant Day captured what they found. As they walked into the front door, there was Steve right at the bottom of this grand staircase. And unfortunately, at that point, he was gone. He was dead. You could hear the officers whispering and talking in low voices. That was because Lana Clayton was just around the corner, distraught and crying. So they did not want to say anything that was disturbing to her. So she said she left the next day. Did not put anything, just his wife and family. Sergeant Day needed to talk with the wife of Steve, Lana, to find out what had happened. Ma'am, I am Sergeant Day. I am going to be here for just a little while until the coroner gets here. To his sisters. He seemed to have a radiant glow about him that he had been missing for a little while. He was noticeably excited about the future. Her name was Lana Walsh, 12 years his junior. She was a dedicated medical nurse who had grown up in the quiet towns of Oklahoma. When Rosie first met her, Lana struck her as being very sweet. She was a very quiet woman, but exceptionally polite and nice. And this profound quietness kind of stood out immediately, primarily because Steve himself was not very quiet at all. Steve's personality was gigantic and room-filling, while Lana was more like a gentle wallflower, observing from the edges. Despite their obvious personality differences, Steve was absolutely sure she was the one he had been waiting for. They were always very affectionate with each other, constantly walking arm in arm. Steve was always happily hugging her, playfully squeezing her, and warmly kissing her cheek. Rosie felt incredibly happy for her big brother. She decided that anyone her brother loved so deeply, she was naturally going to welcome and embrace into the family fold. It was not long at all before Steve eagerly asked Lana to move in with him. After they got to know each other quite a bit more through countless conversations and shared dinners, Steve managed to persuade her to come live with him in Charlotte. As his family well knew, Steve could be a very convincing negotiator when he set his mind to something. To make their new house feel like a true home, they decided to add some furry new additions to the family. The very first dog that Steve and Lana brought home was named Guinness, a sleek and elegant Italian greyhound. They both completely fell in love with the affectionate breed, and so they quickly decided that they wanted to adopt another one. The second little dog was a sweet girl, and her name was Sadie. With Lana by his side, Steve finally felt as though he found his long-missing puzzle piece. He always had such wonderful, glowing things to say about her. He affectionately referred to her as his Lana Sue. He simply could not hide the profound feelings he held in his heart for her. He was very much in love. Rosie thought that Steve had finally found himself beautifully grounded with Lana. She felt like her brother had discovered a true, lasting sense of peace with this quiet nurse. Steve Clayton had journeyed to North Carolina looking for a pleasant change from his old, fast-paced life, and he ended up finding a whole new, beautiful future. When Steve Clayton had danced with his beloved sister at her wedding, he had quietly dreamed of finding his own special someone to share his golden years with. And now, 6 years after that dance, he was eagerly preparing to marry the woman he considered the love of his life. It was a perfectly lovely day in the cool month of November in the year 2013. Many members of the Clayton family had excitedly traveled all the way up to North Carolina just to be present and to enjoy that magical day with him. And true to his nature, Steve made sure the entire celebration was wonderfully special for everyone who attended. Lana and Steve's wedding ceremony took place right at their beautiful house in Charlotte. It was such a splendid, heartwarming event. Guests could just vividly see the pure love radiating from them. Both the bride and the groom were absolutely beaming with joy. Soon after tying the knot, the happy couple decided to relocate to what they believed would be their forever home. They moved just over the state border into South Carolina, settling peacefully on the picturesque banks of Lake Wylie. The new residence was like something plucked straight out of a glossy travel postcard. This gorgeous, ocean blue-colored home sat majestically on a stunning piece of prime lakefront property. It was beyond lovely, surrounded by lush trees and calm waters. The couple enthusiastically set about refurbishing their grand new home. They spent weeks meticulously decorating the spacious rooms with Steve's impressive, lifelong collection of fine artworks and historical antiques. Steve was a kind of sentimental person for whom objects held deep personal meaning. He was very proud of his curated possessions because they were all totally unique in some special way. The strategic move to the lake also allowed the couple to fully indulge in their shared love of nature. If there was ever something fun and outdoors to do, Steve was guaranteed to be the very first one out the door. He was always incredibly gung-ho about exploring the world. Their pleasant relocation to South Carolina also meant the pair were geographically much closer to Steve's wide, extended family. A young man named Nick French, who had married Steve's niece back in the year 2010, was thrilled by the move, having officially become Steve's nephew. Nick and his wife hung out with Steve and Lana a great deal once they moved up to the lake. The family would frequently go out to joyful dinners with them. They would attend lively outdoor concerts together, and they would consistently gather for special family events during every single holiday season. Steve and Lana were also conveniently located just a short 30-minute drive away from Lana's own son and her young grandchildren. The energetic couple never once said no to a bit of babysitting duty. Steve naturally had a wonderful, magical way with children. This was largely because Steve had always remained a playful child at heart. He was exactly the kind of grown man who would happily get right down on the living room floor and play with the kids for hours. He would sing songs like Pop Goes the Weasel to make them giggle, with the cheerful sounds of children constantly echoing around. There was truly never a dull moment inside the Clayton household. During one particularly funny visit, Lana filmed a video of Steve hilariously attempting to describe how to do the limbo dance, all while her twin granddaughters watched him in total amusement. The little girls declared they would make Papa do it. Steve animatedly explained the rules, saying that there's a stick, and a person has to lean back like that, and then walk entirely under the stick. He demonstrated how a person has to get real low to the ground to successfully go under the stick, explaining to the girls that it is a fun game and a silly dance. He joked that the young girls had to tell him how to properly act it out. Lana was highly tickled by the whole performance, though the young twins ultimately seemed a bit more interested in eating their sweet ice cream than learning the limbo. Steve genuinely enjoyed playing all kinds of games with his family, whether it was a highly competitive round of Scrabble at the kitchen table or even a silly, messy childish game in the living room. He was always an enthusiastic participant. During a game involving whipped cream, Steve playfully challenged his family, asking if they wanted him to get in on the action, knowing full well that they did. He instructed the kids to just spin the colorful spinner and then turn the plastic handles many times. He counted aloud 1, 2, and then bravely put his head into the contraption, resting his chin on the plastic ledge. He called out letters A, E, D, F, bringing laughter to the room. The children shouted for him to spin it forward, debating whether to turn both handles or just one. Steve was essentially a huge, lovable teddy bear. The children absolutely loved to play with him, and he always had joyful kids hanging onto his arms and legs. He would ask them what number they rolled, cheering when they yelled out 3. And Lana was always game for some lighthearted fun as well. When the game mechanism finally triggered, sending whipped cream flying, Steve would shout in mock terror, "Oh no, it is coming. It is coming up. It does it every time. Here it comes." And then the room would erupt in cheers and uncontrollable laughter. For 5 beautiful years into their marriage, Steve and Lana appeared to the outside world to be thriving wonderfully. Their home was filled with light, laughter, and the warmth of family. But the bright summer days took an unexpected turn. In the warm month of June, in the year 2018, the usually energetic Steve suddenly fell ill. It was a stark contrast to his normal, vibrant self. He told his family that he felt incredibly dizzy, complaining of a severe bout of vertigo. He mentioned that his ear hurt terribly and that he felt deeply nauseous. It got so bad that he actually started getting physically sick right out in his beloved yard. Rosie felt real bad for her brother when she heard the news. She knew that he had occasionally experienced minor issues with vertigo prior to this incident, but nothing quite this severe. Steve later told her he had been very ill and did not know exactly what was wrong with his body. He just remembered that he had been happily working out in his garden, enjoying the sunshine, when he suddenly started to feel dizzy, a little nauseous, and developed a pounding headache. He initially thought that maybe he had just stayed out too long and gotten sunstroke. When Lana asked if he was okay, he could only manage a weak nod. As a trained nurse, Lana calmly decided that the absolute best thing for Steve was immediate, uninterrupted bed rest.